I've seen funny things online where like people get a tattoo of their like 23andMe results. Girl, just wait until the update. Like, what are you gonna do? Your tattoo might be totally wrong. People want to control what comes out of my mouth. They want to control what kind of research I do. And that's weird. Like, I don't care what you want to study. Go study it. Like, go do it. But this is verifiable history. Go to the Library of Congress, type it in. You're gonna find a lot of information on it. We need to understand how this cringe and stupid stuff influenced our country, our family experience, our family stories, and that is our right. That's your right to do that. When did Italians become white in America? That was actually a comment I got this week, and we're gonna touch on that a little bit today. Hey everybody, happy Sunday. This is my AMA, Ask Me Anything Sunday video where I'm just pulling from the comments. I have a comment on Virginia's law that reclassified people with mixed native heritage as colored. Another person asked, when did Italians become considered white in America? Then I have a couple of fun questions to close this up. So let's jump right in. So first, I got 2 DNA questions this week that I think they're really the same question in different words, so I'm gonna put them together. Rahanian, I think, said they tested at a few different sites and MyHeritage came back looking completely different than the other ones. It only showed European results, even though they know they're multiracial. And then Pickles McPherson asked, why is my DNA completely different with different companies? So this comes up a lot in the comments, so I'll do my best as a non-scientist and non-geneticist to explain how I understand it. None of these DNA tests are really just reading your DNA, like a scan, and telling you what's in there in some pure way. It's not like when you get like a blood test and they're, kind of assessing how much iron do you have and things like that. What they're doing is they're comparing our DNA against a reference panel, which is basically just this database of people that they have collected who are supposed to represent different populations around the world. They can be like, well, how many people are in each reference group? Great question. Or like, who decided that that person belongs in that group? Every company builds their reference panels differently, and every time they do an update, it means they kind of tweak a reference panel in there somewhere. So they're picking different people from different regions, and then they define their categories differently. So some people will say, what counts is this, but not this, and all of that. And so then they're running different math on these results. So when you test the ancestry, and then test it 23andMe, and then MyHeritage, you're getting 3 different interpretations of your DNA story. And these are all held up against different reference panels. That's why they don't line up. MyHeritage in particular is one that people flag as coming back kind of weird, but I personally found that it matched my paper trail feedback. And I think that's really important. It's important to have a paper trail, which means doing your family ancestry work, having documents, building that tree out that you can compare and contrast to what you get. Their reference panel might work differently than these bigger companies, so it's not shocking that the results are different, but I just really was happy with MyHeritage. I am pretty happy with that one out of the other ones. I feel like Ancestry, DNA, and 23andMe just lumped a lot together. Felt kind of lazy to me. I don't know. GEDmatch, though, is a whole different animal. GEDmatch is not a testing company at all. You actually just upload your raw data from wherever you test it. So you can download your raw data, like from 23andMe, take that raw data and put it into GEDmatch, and you can run it through a bunch of different calculators. It's so addicting. Some of them are academic, some are more like hobby calculators. I'm definitely in there using calculators I have no right to use because I don't know what's going on, but it can feel more detailed. So you're getting access to a lot more analysis tools, deep analysis. And if you're really trying to figure out your ancestry, though, honestly, I would test it more in one company, then upload your raw data to GEDmatch and kind of hold those percentages loosely. I like to say they're signposts that kind of point in the right direction. They're estimates. I've seen funny things online where like, people get a tattoo of their like 23andMe results. Girl, just wait until the update. Like, what are you gonna do? Your tattoo might be totally wrong. So DNA is a tool that supports our paper trail, but we still need to get those documents in there to do the heavy lifting, if that makes sense. Okay, next one was someone named KP Pivot wants to talk about the Virginia law video. So thank you for watching this one. This video was about reclassification of people. So the full comment was, in this Virginia law, according to modern day science, that would make everyone on earth that was in the United States Black and illegal. because if anyone at least 5 generations or more back had African in them. So basically, the law was kind of stipulating if you had any African ancestry, you would be reclassified in Virginia as colored. And they're saying modern day, how many people will be reclassified at this point as colored? Unless you could prove you're related to Pocahontas, and that was the stipulation on this law. Unless you could prove that, if you had Native or African ancestry, you would be classified legally as colored. What are these ridiculous man-made rules? This is cringe and stupid. Yep, you are getting it exactly. It is cringe and stupid. And that's the frustration that the video really aimed at. The whole thing is cringe and stupid. Like, for sure, the rules are made up, these categories are man-made. And it's the whole reason that I wanted to put this video out in the first place, because we have bought hook, line, and sinker into this idea that these categories are just immovable, intractable, just these permanent parts of who we are, of our identity. And that's just not true historically in the US. I mean, other places too, but I'm talking 1920s. That was the discussion that was happening. And one thing I want to add though, because I think it makes this whole thing more absurd, I'll link to it, but Virginia had these powerful families who had claimed a descent from Pocahontas, but suddenly they realized that their paperwork would change. Like if they claimed to be Native American and had his ancestry, then they would be reclassified as colored, and they did not want that because that would change where their kids could go to school, where they could live, X, Y, Z. And so the same legislators that wrote the law wrote themselves an out. So they said if you have 1/16 or less Native ancestry from Pocahontas' line, then you can still be legally white. They were protecting their own families while going after everybody else's. So I agree, it's cringe, it's stupid, and it was enforced. Real families had their birth certificates changed. Whole tribes lost federal and state recognition, partly because of what the Virginia Bureau of Vital Statistics did with this law. And that's what the video was about. It was documenting what these people did to these specific communities. And a lot of people were really mad at me about this video, which is so crazy because, again, I'm a historian. I don't know, I do know what it is, but it's just ridiculous that we're allowed to study some parts of our history and not others. People want to control what comes out of my mouth. They want to control what kind of research I do. And that's weird. I don't care what you want to study. Go study it. Go do it. But this is verifiable history. Go to the Library of Congress, type it in. You're going to find a lot of information on it. But at the end of the day, it's cringe and stupid. But we need to understand how this cringe and stupid stuff influenced our country, our family experience, our family stories. And that is our right. That's your right to do that. Okay, this next one's from a couple weeks back. I do want to engage with it because this person put a lot of thought into what they wrote. It's a longer comment, so I'm going to read it in full, and then we'll get into it. All right, so his shadow is 1961. They said, it's interesting to me as a Black person how people are so willing to embrace their European ancestry but not their African. It's weird, but I understand the construct Europeans have created that we all exist in. And again, you might not like that. You might be upset by that phrase, but as I just proved, there's legal documents from the 1920s that were literally reclassifying people on one drop of African heritage. That's a fact, and many other states had laws like this as well. I had white passing family members who chose their Blackness over their appearance, for which I am thankful because that was their resistance. The way in which America was created did a great disservice to everyone by forcing them to assimilate and to choose to be something they're not to succeed. It has created animosity towards Black and brown people that to this day has not stopped. We can't all be the same people. We are meant to learn from our differences, not fear them. I like that. I like this idea of we aren't all the same people, and how beautiful and amazing is that. But even in that, we have to give people space to understand their own family story, and it may be very different from your family story. My dad's side of the family were late immigrants to the U.S., coming over from southern Italy in the 1920s. And right before the ban on Italian immigration happened in 1924, his great-grandpa came over in 1923. That was the latest one. And but my mom's side of the family had very different experiences. And you don't want to paint with a broad brush and just be because that didn't happen to my family, it doesn't matter. Everybody should be allowed to understand how their family story was shaped. So I agree. Let's learn from our differences. Okay, she goes on or he goes on, I'm not sure. I've commented this before. You were a person of color. I would never think you were Irish or Italian, but I'd know you were a person of color. The man who asked if you were mulatto knew you were mixed. Your father wasn't fooling anyone. She's referring to a story I told a couple weeks ago. When I was maybe like 8 or 9, I was at my dad's office and someone came in and was talking with him, and I overheard him talking to my dad, and he asked my dad if he knew I was his daughter, but he asked if I was mulatto, and my dad was like, no. And it was like weird because I didn't know what that word meant at the time. And it was not the last time that I've had experiences like that. Your father wasn't fooling anyone, though. Anyone with eyes, especially back in the day, knew we should embrace our differences with pride, but until we decolonize our minds, these discussions will need to be had. So I would say my dad at that time didn't really know about my mom's family. I've asked him about it, and he said, he met my mom's gram before. He said she had an accent that he didn't know if she was Hispanic or what her deal was because she was from Louisiana. She spoke Creole. But that wasn't made known, and he didn't know. Like, I was like, tell me what you knew. He was like, I don't know, she was darker and she had an accent, or she was from Louisiana. I'm like, all right. Like, in hindsight's 20/20, right? Hindsight's always 20/20. But yeah, I think discussions are something that I like to have on my channel. And I think part of that is being a historian, and I love to look at documents and kind of try to understand what was the context for this document being created? Like, what was going on, and I want to talk about it, and does it still apply today? What can we learn from it? And so I agree, let's have more conversations. I think that's great. All right, let's go to the next question. Okay, so this person said, the romance of metaphysics. That's a really beautiful username. Wait a minute. Some have thought I was Italian, not because I'm white, but because I am other. So when I look at you, I can clearly see you have a darker complexion, and that's why they would call you Italian. So when did they become white? I only ask because this has been a long debate, and the lore suggests that white took place on an island. So then how did it spread? Shiva. Okay. I'm going to see if I'm understanding what this person is saying. So you mentioned that people thought you were Italian because they were kind of reading you as other. That was your personal experience. So I think that actually lines up with what the history shows in the US. When did Italians become white in America? Now, I made a video about this, actually lots and lots of videos with lots of primary sources, but this video is called How Italians Became White in America. And this is kind of tongue-in-cheek because there are two versions of being white in America. There's being legally white, and there's being accepted as white. I think a lot of people that are frustrated with me will not accept this difference or this nuance, but it exists. And my husband and I are actually going to sit down and do a video together because he and I don't see eye to eye on all this stuff. But where we do see eye to eye is that he says that, he identifies as white, even though he has mixed heritage, and he would identify me as white. But he also knows, based on my experience, like, I usually don't get clocked as that. That's not been my experience. And I've had different experiences than someone who I think would be classified as white and also experiences life that way. And obviously people have all different kinds of experiences and all that. But how Italians became white, I'm gonna do a little quick sketch on here, but if you haven't seen the video, I'll link to it. But Italians in America, and this is Southern Italians. Most of the Italian immigrants that came to the US are Southern, from the same area for the most part. They were not considered white by the WASP establishment when they first arrived in large numbers in the late 1800s and 1900s. They were classified, and many times as a separate racial category. And yes, race science was a thing that universities and governments took seriously back then. And that science drew hard lines between Northern Europeans and Southern Europeans, which is why we had immigration stopped from Southern European countries in 1924. You can look into that. And it wasn't lifted until the 60s. Italians were on the wrong side of these lines. And so that showed up in really tangible ways. So one of the largest mass lynchings in US history was 11 Sicilian immigrants in New Orleans in 1891. And the immigration laws in the 1920s, especially 1924 Immigration Act, was written to cut off Southern Italian and Eastern European immigration because these groups were seen as racially undesirable. Their words, not mine. Read Madison Grant. The congressional record on that one is really clear, by the way, though. that is straight from what the lawmakers said at the time. They were concerned that the Southern Italians were going to come in and muddy the waters of white America. Okay, so what does that mean? If they're white, how can they muddy the waters of white America? You let me know. So Shiva, when you're saying that people read you as Italian because they're seeing you as other, that's literally that's a historically real experience. For the most part, being read as Italian in America was being perceived as other. But this is a whole thread on the channel, not just Italians. If you're new here, I have videos on how many groups became white in America. Some had to go to court, to the Supreme Court, to prove that they were white. How do you prove that you're white? It's a gross process, but this is American legal history, and it's not that old. It's from the 20s. So you can look for that playlist on my channel page. Okay, so I want to close this out with some two fun, nicer, light questions. Thomas Soto, 8693. He said, Thomas from Germany said, hi, Danny. I'd love to know what kind of music you're listening to. I could imagine you're a modern jazz person. It's in the background of your videos. But when you love to sing in your car and maybe under the shower, maybe it's more folk music or pop or rock or hip hop. Have a nice Sunday with your family. Thomas, the guy from Germany. Okay, I just love music. Like, music is a huge part of my life. It has always been a huge part of my life ever since I was a kid. And I had like a tape deck in my room, and I would wait for like the top 10 to come on like Friday nights and try to like record songs onto my cassette tape. And like, I just been waiting there trying to press record for the songs I wanted. But I love listening to music. So let's see, when I'm in the car or working out, right now I'm listening to a lot of K-pop. I feel like good for working out. But I love everything. I have my records that I have in here are a lot of like classic rock and honky tonk. I'd say like in the car, I love listening to Earth, Wind and Fire. I grew up listening to Earth, Wind and Fire with my parents. They would put on the record tape, they put on the record on the record table, and they would like be dancing around the living room after dinner. And so Earth, Wind and Fire is like really a special place in my heart. So I love that. But like I said, I got really into K-pop because I had preteen girls, and so we're just doing that together. And I love jazz. My dad's cousin, like his first cousin, was a famous saxophone player. I think he played a monk. I'm gonna have to check. Pretty sure he did. But jazz has always also been a thing that, you know, listen to a lot. So I listen to all kinds of stuff. I love everything. And last question was W Rose M2P said, who's your favorite Russian writer or author? So I love Russian literature. It was one of my double major was Russian and American history. And I love Dostoevsky. If you haven't read Crime and Punishment or the Brothers Karamazov, I would say Crime and Punishment is much more accessible. It's really, 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 really good. And this is kind of niche, but if you ever read Gogol, he has a story called The Nose, which is so funny and ridiculous. And it's basically this guy is a barber, and he accidentally cuts off someone's nose and puts it in his pocket, and then he doesn't know what to do, and then he wakes up the next day and the nose is gone, but then he sees the nose around town, but now it's like wearing like a general's suit, and it's getting like treated really well. It's like so insane. Like, I don't know what this guy was on, but it was so funny. So if you ever want to try something totally different, read The Nose by Gogol. Okay, that's our AMA for today. If you left a comment this week and I didn't get to it, I do try to read them all, but you can leave it below this video too, and that will help. And thank you for hanging out with me. I actually like love doing the AMAs. I know they're not like big, huge videos, but I don't know, it's just nice to spend time together and connect with you better. And I don't take it for granted that you guys show up for this kind of stuff. It matters to me a lot, and it matters to me the community here is still doing the work and research, even when the algorithm doesn't want to reward us for that. That's okay, because we know where we belong. So thank you for that so much. I'll see you Friday.